The very ideology that Fit pushes for in his book is the exact thing that got his partner Fresh caught up. He is now bringing an illegitimate child into this world by practicing the act of having premarital sex with multiple women. And this Muslim guy pushes back on the assertion that having multiple partners makes you understand women more. Check it out.
But yeah, I mean, sorry.
But on this point, bro, here's what I would say.
Yeah.
There is no evidence that having sex with a lot of women translates into an ability to understand women in the context of a committed relationship or longevous relationship. There is no evidence of that. So this is where the red pill makes a lot of claims, assertions, but they're not backed, because the idea is, I feel like there's just ad hoc justifications and rationalization for hedonism, which is effectively just doing whatever you want, whatever you desire. But really, like, let us assess this claim, the claim that if you have sex with a lot of women, that's going to lead to you knowing women more and therefore having a stronger relationship, more longevous relationship with some kind of woman. But it doesn't seem to me that there's any evidence to that effect, because I was looking at some studies on casual sex, and all of those studies, first of all, they're mixed, they're contradictory, funny enough. Some of them say that, yeah, they harm women. Actually, most of them say they harm women. Casual sex harm women. That is a consensus psychological finding.
It harms men too, a lot of these studies, but
yes, some of them say it harms men, some of them say it doesn't harm men.
Yeah,
there's no study that says it helps them in relationships. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, of course not. And they would never run a study like that because it would be considered unethical, right? And we know that, when they run these studies, they have to be politically correct. They got to get funding. They have to do it in a certain way to get the blessing. But what I will say is, with the whole body sleeping with women or whatever it may be, it's not necessarily to understand women better. It's to understand the women that you don't want to necessarily be with. And I think that's half the game, because what ends up happening, right, remember, I mean, you're in the UK, so you know this too. I mean, the UK is going through this as well. We live in a very hypersexualized world where women are more promiscuous than ever before. So my thing is, right, I look at it like, I was just having a discussion with Andrew. He's a devout Orthodox Christian, and he saw my perspective on this too. If you're going to try to meet a woman in the West where they are promiscuous, they don't necessarily adhere to gender roles when it doesn't benefit them, they want a man that makes money, but they don't want to necessarily submit, etc. I think it's very important for you as a man to identify these women early on and not bring them into your life, because the beauty of religion, right, whether it's Christianity, Islam, or Judaism, is that it basically had an institution of shame, and it had what I call training wheels to keep women honest with their man. It pretty much shamed them for not doing things that they were supposed to do. But these training wheels are effectively gone. We live in a secular world now. And unless you're a very religious man and you're meeting a very religious woman, it's going to be very difficult for you to find a woman that's virtuous. So my thing is, I think and the other reason why I think this is so important is because when you get married, right, luckily, in Islam, you can just go to a mosque, go to an imam, he'll marry you, boom, done. You don't got to worry about the state being involved. But most people don't get married that way. They get married through the state. And with the way the family courts are set up, with the way divorce is set up, with the way it's basically an entire industry against men, I look at it like, if you're going to go ahead and you want to have a family one day, which is the nuclear family, which is the backbone of society, and you want to get married, you are taking on a tremendous amount of risk, and I don't want you to go in blind. However, if you're getting married and the state isn't involved and there's no severe consequences to you financially, then sure, go ahead and be less sexually experienced and meet a woman, because at least you're not going to be severely punished for it. But my thing is, the reason why I even gave that idea, like, hey, get with more women so that you understand them, is because I just don't want men to deal with the horrors of the family court. Now, is it the best solution? Probably not, but I think it's a pragmatic one given the world that we're in now.
So here's the thing. I just want to know what the evidence is of, for example, having intercourse with multiple women. What benefit, like, let's say 50 or 30, what benefit are you alleging that it has on the man? What benefit are you alleging?
That's a fair question. Every man has different competence, right? So like one guy might be able to hook up with 10 girls and be like, okay, you know what? I get it. Like I don't, it is what it is. But another guy, might be incompetent, might be an idiot. Everyone's, level of adaptation is different. So I'm not saying, oh, have a hard 50 and don't get married. It's like, no, if you find a girl that's worthy, that's fine. And I would argue that, like, our podcast is like, we're able to kind of fast line it where, remember, this information hasn't been out for very long. So people are kind of learning now through us talking about it on our platform, etc. So they might not necessarily have to even hit 50 because they're learning from our mistakes. The Chinese.
But what if they do get 50? What's the benefit of that? What do they get from that?
Well, hopefully, depending on the individual, they are able to identify women that are worthy versus ones that aren't.
In a sexual capacity.
Well, I'm also assuming that this person would be seeing this woman. If they're just looking to have sex, then obviously it's gonna be a waste. But I'm talking about, you're obviously courting this woman, you're hanging out with this woman, etc. You're seeing.
Because look, my friend had your book. I was trying to look for it myself. It's called.
Oh, nice.
I was trying to find something, and actually I was flicking through it right before I spoke to you, and I like the statistics you have on here. One of them that you had on here was, for example, that a man will spend 30 hours or something like this, doing 30 hours doing speed dating online in order to just get one date, 1.46 date in the year or something like that. Now, What I'm saying is that to get 50 women, look, you know it's a numbers game, and I know it's a numbers game.
Yeah.
The feasibility, the amount of man hours that you're going to need to put in to have intercourse with 50 women that are not prostitutes, according to your statistics that you mentioned, right? The amount of man hours, we're talking about, like if he's going to use Tinder or some kind of an app, and according to these stats, he's going to need to do a lot of that, right? And the question of benefit here is an important one. Obviously, from a religious standpoint, Muslims, Christians, and Jews all agree that sex shouldn't even be done outside of marriage. Now, it is still possible to marry 50 women. I mean, I'm not saying you cannot marry and divorce 50 women. It's a possibility. But I'm not necessarily saying that one should do that. Of course, we wouldn't agree that one should do that. The point I'm trying to get at is that there isn't actually any good evidence that having intercourse with that many women would give you a kind of benefit in the relationship. In fact, you could argue the opposite. Because if you get sex very easily, going back to the idea of virtue, then you can be less restrained in your sexual appetites. And this is something that in virtue ethics is referred to as temperance. So if you're less restrained, you don't have as much restraint, for example. You don't have self-control. And if you don't have willpower and self-control in one area, you're less likely to have it in other areas. And I've read that in a book called Willpower, funny enough, by Roy Baumeister. A very fantastic book. I recommend it. But he mentioned the point that if you have willpower in one area, for example, he mentioned fasting, religious fasting as an example, Roy Baumeister. If you have willpower and discipline in one area, it's transferable to other areas. The idea of getting 50 women having sex with them, which is difficult anyway, according to these stats, because just because you're dating a woman, it doesn't mean you're going to have sex with her. As you know, like for the average person, you guys might not be the average person, because, you know, from a status perspective, you guys have got, you know, big channel, good money coming in. The guy's wearing a nice Rolex red face. I like it, fresh. And you're wearing a nice watch as well. You know, you guys are well put together.
Thank you, bro. Thank you, bro.
So not everyone is fresh, and not everyone's Myron Gaines. Yeah, and so it's not going to be easy to get sex like that. So for them to put 30 hours to 50 hours to get a date, and then after that to get like 100 of those, maybe 30, I don't know what the numbers would be, a conversion rate, 5 dates to one woman having sex, maybe. I don't know.
Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I appreciate you guys being here. First, I want to say thank you to all of the new subscribers. I appreciate you guys. I also appreciate those that leave thoughtful comments. By the way, if you post a comment and you don't see it after you posted it, that means YouTube flagged it and I can't respond to it. So sometimes if I go into YouTube Studios, I can see the comment, and even if I unblock the comment, it still doesn't let me reply to it. So I do apologize for that. I will try to respond to your comment however much I can read in the following video, and then you can come back. But I know somebody posted a comment about the music that was in the video. I don't know if it's your music. If so, shout out to you. I'm gonna have to go back to that video and watch it and see exactly. But all of the music that I post comes from CapCuts. And then there was a young lady that left a comment about working in corporate and her lunch breaks, but I couldn't read the whole comment, so I wasn't able to reply to that. So I'm sorry, sis. But yeah, if you guys can, if you don't see your comment, just think about what may be a triggering word or anything that may be controversial, and just reword it and post it again, because I like to comment on everybody's, whatever they post, I like to comment for everybody. But anyways, let's get on to this video. I will try to make it short because my analytics tell me that after 5 minutes, you guys drop off. Also, another thing, well, I'll leave it for another day. So one thing I will agree with Fit on this is that when you are dating multiple people and getting to know multiple people, you do learn what you don't like in a partner. And I think the only way to do that is by getting to know multiple people to figure out. Knowing what you don't like, as he said, is half the battle. And the other half of that is knowing what you do desire. And the way you find that out is by knowing who you are. The more I know who I am, the more I know what my boundaries, my standards, and my expectations are, the easier it is for me to decipher if a person is right for me. Where I disagree with is sleeping with multiple women in order to find that virtuous woman. That's contradictory in itself. And that's one thing about this interview. I feel like he contradicted himself multiple times. And I sat through, my cousin, shout out to him, sent me the video. So in order to find a virtuous woman, you can't be a non-virtuous man. It just doesn't make sense. Okay? Theoretically, literally, it doesn't make sense. You can't be out here sleeping with multiple women, giving your body up, and think you're gonna find a woman who is the total opposite of that. I find that really funny. And I love the fact that this guy pushed back on that. Also, you have to consider the source. Fit is not a man that is successfully married. So if he himself has not found that virtuous woman, what he's doing so far has not worked. It has not worked. And then he doubles back and says, well, maybe not 50, but you could be a smart guy, and you could go through 10 women and find, the woman of your dreams, because you figured it out and you've watched our channel and you've learned from our mistakes. Well, newsflash, most people are not that wise. Most people cannot look at a situation and say, it didn't work for him, so I'm not gonna do it. Doesn't work that way. Most people have to experience it themselves. But what you're telling them is to go out and sleep with multiple women in order to figure out what it is. And to me, that is wrong. I don't think it's right. I don't think there's anything virtuous about it. There's nothing godly about it. And on top of that, he speaks about being successful in several areas of your life. Joe always talks about the 5 pillars of life. You need spiritual, mental, emotional, financial, and physical stability and health in order to be a successful person. Not just man and woman, but just a successful person. But if you want to be a successful man, you have to have all 5 of those pillars intact and be constantly working to improve those things, right? If your goal is to sleep with 50 women or to sleep with multiple women, guess what? All of those areas of your life are going to be affected. Think about the financial. You know how much it costs to take a woman out for coffee and dinner and drinks and all that stuff just to get to know her? And then most of the time, she's not going to sleep with you on the first date unless you're looking for a particular type of woman that's going to give it up. She's not going to sleep with you on the first, second, or third date. You're going to have to court her for a while. That's kind of costs money, right? Physical, you're risking catching a disease or having a baby, okay? Which goes totally against what he's preaching. He says if you don't want the courts in your business, you have to get married outside of the legal system. Well, guess what? If you're having sex with 50 women, there's a huge possibility that you're going to end up impregnating a couple of those women. And guess what? The court is going to be in your business, just like Fresh. Fresh was messing around with a woman. She claims he is the father of this unborn child. And guess what? She's going to make him pay. If he doesn't do it willingly, the court is going to be in your the court is going to be in your business. So everything that he's saying totally contradicts itself. Banging a lot of women does not make you more knowledgeable on how women think. You have to have conversation. You have to spend quality time with a person in order to know where their mind is, where their heart is, where their soul is. Having sex does not equal that, okay? I think a lot of these social media influencers take advantage of the fact that men and women have a groupthink mentality. A lot of people out there are not independent thinkers and can't look at a situation or hear somebody online and separate their admiration for them apart from what it is that they're saying. You know? So many of us grew up without a father in the home. A lot of us grew up without mothers in the home, suitable parents. So when we grow up, we're clinging to an ideology rather than going to God himself. A lot of people would rather watch something online or read a ton of books from people that they admire. And rather than skimming the fat, all of the stuff that doesn't apply or it doesn't make sense, when you logically think about it, they hold on to all of it and they live their life according to that. You have so many YouTubers and social media influencers out there like Fresh and Fit, Kevin Samuels, Cynthia G, Dr. Umar, Roland Martin, Jordan Peterson, and the list goes on. Everything that they say isn't the golden rule, but because we're looking for leadership, we cling to that person, and then everything that they talk about, we take it, we ingest it, and then we try to live our lives according to it. And I think a lot of these social media influencers, they know that. I was watching a reality show where a gentleman stated that he didn't have his father in his life, but he had a stepfather who was the father to his sister. He treated him like his son. But he said one day he accidentally called him dad. It slipped, right? Because kids they want that father. They need that father figure. So it slipped and he called him dad. And do you know what his stepfather told him? He said, don't call me dad. I'm not your dad. This man is now 40 and he still remembers that to this day, which means it was significant. So what do you think that man felt when he was a child? He felt rejection, probably shame, embarrassment. And guess what? He's taking that into his dating life, right? That sense of rejection. And so every time he's dealing with a woman and she rejects him, I'm sure it brings him right back to when he was a child. You know why? Because he hasn't dealt with it. There's so many people in the world that are not dealing with their childhood trauma. And then we're taking all of that into these relationships. So I'm saying this to say, ladies, if you are dating a man and this man listens to Fresh and Fit and he holds them up here in high regard, I would cut him out. He's not the right one for you because he's getting contradictory information and he's living his life based on what these men put out, which is false. It's not godly. It's the opposite of that, you know, especially if he is not a free, independent thinker and he can make his own decisions and he can grasp the world through his own lens and not through the influence of social media. But I want to know what you guys think, especially the men. Do you think going through a lot of women is a way for a man to understand how women think better? And do you think that is a way for men to figure out what partner is best for them by sleeping with upwards of 50 women? And do you guys think that sleeping with multiple women will enhance your chances of finding the perfect mate? I don't think so at all. But you guys tell me what you think. I just wanted to talk about this real quick, but the full video will be in the description. Leave me a comment, like and subscribe. I appreciate you guys. God bless.